There's no breakthroughs needed. There's no leap of faith. The clean disruption of energy and transportation will happen. It's inevitable. By 2030, essentially all energy is going to be solar. More money, more investment, more R&D is going into the improvement of batteries, which, if anything, will make the clean disruption happen even faster. Solar will have improved by 2020 its unit costs relative to natural gas by more than 6,700 times, relative to nuclear by 4,500 times. There is no way that, that any of these other sources of energy can compete with solar. Not in the short term, not in the long term.
We are starting to see a series of leaders in very large companies, much more powerful than ours, than mine, that really believe this, not only because they want to position their company in a particular place, but that this is what they want their personal legacy to be, is a commitment to sustainability. I was really trying to motivate the 10,500 people that work at Energy is that, yeah, you know, we're trying to make money and all that, but we're basically trying to, you know, save the world. I mean, what does Energy stand for? Yeah, we want to save the world. Who wants to come to work and save the world? That's the thing. I mean, if you ask me the electricity industry in the context of climate change, I would say, in you know, elevator speech, we are currently the biggest part of the problem, but we are an even bigger part of the solution. Because if electricity can make itself zero carbon, then we can turn and solve the transportation industry, and we can solve the industry, and then all we need is someone doing agriculture and deforestation, and we're done.
Simple as that. For decades, solar power was so expensive and unwieldy, few could afford it. And that is changing in a mind-bendingly rapid pace. Over the past several years, the cost of solar energy has dramatically decreased. I mean, dramatically, making it more accessible to more people. Earlier this week, it got another shot in the arm for the Obama administration after it announced a new initiative to make solar energy more affordable to low and middle-income Americans. White House hopeful Senator Bernie Sanders then introduced legislation with a similar goal. Solar energy is having a moment right now. And the future we have long been promised is now, finally, upon us.
We have this handy fusion reactor in the sky called the sun, okay? You don't have to do anything. It just works. Shows up every day and produces ridiculous amounts of power.
But today, solar is making a comeback. Big time. Solar power capacity in the U.S. has jumped 20-fold since 2008. The fastest growing source of electricity in America is the sun.
The biggest trend in solar right now is solar has become affordable.
Solar City CEO Lyndon Rive is confident the company can enlist 1 million customers by 2018.
The demand's always been there. It's just the industry has to build out the infrastructure to deliver that demand.
That kind of rapid growth is thanks mainly to cost. Solar is now cheap. China has helped drive down solar manufacturing costs by investing a lot of money in solar panel production. But solar is also booming because companies like Solar City have figured out a way to give Americans what they crave: zero money down.
We switched to Solar City. No upfront costs, lowered our monthly bill. Now we have the infinite power of the sun working for us 24/7.
Is not thinking about a demand as something that we can't control, but really thinking about demand as the fundamental controllable element. So rather than thinking about the old way, what I call a sort of interruptible rates and demand response, where we allow the grid to get really hot and then we drop load, is we start managing the load first. We use distributed energy resources, which we define as anything and everything that you think about behind the meter, including load control devices, renewable solar devices, CHP, storage, things we haven't thought of before. And think about how you use those resources with the distribution utility, or the DSP, almost like the conductor in the orchestra, managing those resources so that demand itself becomes highly efficient, and we manage that as the first resource, and we use actually the ability to manage demand and manage load as a way of one controlling price, secondly being an efficient use of capital. In other words, people are putting in these resources better now. Why not use them rather than just use it as sort of a suspenders, use it as part of really managing the grid itself. And actually thinking about the fact that if we manage the efficiency of the system so it becomes more productive, it becomes more inexpensive, and we drive innovation, because what we're really doing is saying that actually we're changing the way we think about the system. And we're not thinking about the customer last, but we're really putting the customer at the center, and we're really rebuilding it from the customer out. And one of the things I want to be really clear about, because we talk about Utility 2.0, we deliberately call this Reforming the Energy Vision, not because we just wanted a different name, but we really wanted to say this is not about utilities. Utilities are now the platform. This is about the innovation on top of the platform that's going to make consumer needs more important.
When you think about the internet and mobile phone infrastructure today, we have a surplus of infrastructure, right? It's what the market can bear. It's what the market pays for. We have lots of unused fiber with Fios and all these other things. And you're going to see the same thing in the grid. I mean, as people put in millions of solar projects, hundreds of thousands of combined heat and power projects, millions of geothermal heat loops, and all of this stuff occurs, a lot of this natural gas capacity that we have will become surplus natural gas capacity.
First, the utilities today remind me of the newspapers in 2000. And why do I say that? I basically look at the utilities and I say, here's a bunch of monolithic big systems, all right, that are normally considered very safe investments that kind of grow 2 or 3%, and they put on lots of debt onto their balance sheets. And I say, okay, they're going to get hit by a lot of new technologies. And let's look at what's happened in the newspaper industry. It's been 10 tough years in the newspaper industry. You had the internet, you had the digital media world, hit the newspaper industry, and slowly but surely, you can see what's happened to the New York Times, the circulation, millions of copies here, of what's happened to the newspaper industry. I was looking around today, and I see tablets everywhere, and I saw one newspaper. All right, and I don't even know. Normally, I'd say, like, hey, can we have a show of hands? Can I just see a show of newspapers? Does anybody have one? 1. 2. Okay. Did anybody pay for it? All right. Normally, what you want to be in these like McKinsey matrices is you want to be on the upper right-hand side. And unfortunately, all the newspapers are moving slowly to the lower left-hand side of this matrix. And it's called the United States Bankruptcy Court. And what's happened is these surefire businesses, which were near monopolies in every single market, got hit by the digital revolution. Here's another graph of newspaper performance, and this just shows you sort of across the decade is what happened. In 2000, they were still in the state of denial, and that's the New York Times, Gannett, McClatchy newspapers, and these are 3 that survived. The worst part about this is the newspaper saw it coming. It didn't matter. The newspapers in 2000 had reserved every single website name. They had NewYorkTimes.com, they had Advertise.com, they had everything. And they said, oh, you can find quotes all over the place which say, oh, we're going to be beneficiaries of the internet. This digitalization thing is going to help us. The problem was is they just didn't have the business model to adapt to it. First, there's this statement of denial, like, oh, wait, no, this could never happen to us. Then they're going to say, we're a regulated industry, we've got to get our returns, and so they're going to raise prices. And the third thing is that's going to drive more people to look for alternatives, and that's going to just be what I call a death spiral. So what's the change that I see today? And I see plummeting solar panel prices, and this is over the past 10 years, have gone from $6 a watt to $3 a watt. And this is the retail value of solar today. And so I look at that technology and I say, okay, who's going to win, who's going to lose from that? And what would happen if people adopted this technology? And as people adopt it more, it will drive the China price. At the China price, it gets cheaper and cheaper. People adopt it more. You'll walk into Home Depot. You'll be like, oh, okay, I'm here to pick up, some new light bulbs. And well, while I'm at it for $200, I can throw 3 solar panels on my house and cut 10% of my demand. Well, what happens in that world? So I went back and I looked, and this is my typo in my report. This is my 2008-2009 utility case study. I looked at utilities which covered 40 million of the United States customers, and it's a little bit better demand drop if you looked at the whole year. It's about a 5% demand drop in megawatt hours between 2008 and 2009 when we entered into a recession. Caused an 8% drop in revenues in the utility industry. cause a 10 or 11% drop in their operating earnings. But because they're so levered and they think of themselves as so, consistent, right, it caused, the debt didn't go away. So it caused a 20% drop in net income. Well, on Wall Street, what we do when your net income drops is we charge you more money if you want to borrow it. And so interest rates, if this happens a few years in a row, what will happen is first they'll deny it, they'll try to raise prices, that'll drive more people off the grid, but the debt will never go away. And they're stuck with the debt. And so my little nugget is that as demand drops, the debt stays forever, and you don't want debt. And so you have this whole flurry of new technologies that could usurp the old. And I'm looking at a few things that, and I see them all the time, and this is just a list, and you've heard of a lot of them, but if you have solar get cheaper, and let's say another 50% cheaper, you're at grid parity in a good part of the United States. People will buy solar not to go off the grid, but they'll just walk away from part of the grid. As they do that, that's probably the most profitable part of the utilities' profits. And that will drive the utilities to raise prices and go into this death spiral.